Welcome everyone to this episode of conscious listening and conscious being and just elevating consciousness. And I am so excited to have Kara Ashley on the podcast today. And she is full of wisdom and full of just so many just amazing things. And yeah, I've been very excited to have her on for a while now. And so I can't believe it's actually happening. And yeah, welcome to
Yay!
the show.
Thanks, Jen. I know, I feel like we've just been waiting for the exact perfect moment, and today's the day.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to and just what's real. We love to just say it how it is.
Totally. Okay, that sounds great. Well, right now I'm in British Columbia. I've been on a road trip for the last 42 days, which has been really sweet. And so I'm in the community library right now in the kids section. And um, this is my kind of attempt at integrating back to Canada from living in the States where you and I met in Boulder. And it's been really sweet revisiting all of these special places that had such an impact on my journey of getting to Colorado. So after being down there for the last 4 years, it's been really nice. Yeah, just revisiting like the old tree friends, and rivers and the ocean. And so I don't have all the official labels right now. I'm really just a hippie in my car, but I would identify as an outdoor educator. And my last job was working with kids at a farm school in Longmont, Colorado. And that was a real dream job, and hoping to continue to work with children and youth as I integrate back into Canada and make my way north to my hometown of Nunavut. So really in this liminal space right now. It feels like a real privilege to just have this time, this really slow time camping and being in nature as I kind of garner the strength to move to the back up to the Arctic and hopefully implement natural highs programming, which is where you and I connected, and that's still the goal and the dream for moving back home to the north. So yeah, little things on the go right now, but like it's a very slow moment in my life.
Yeah, it feels like there's so much permission and so much space to be authentic and be in the moment and just go from place to place and be free and be open and just decide kind of where your heart's moving, from moment to moment. And I've been thinking about that lately too, of being in Boulder now for 6 years, and that kind of that idea of place hasn't really been challenged, I'm going to do a road
Mm.
trip next week to California, to San Diego, but other than that, it's it is liberating to challenge your mind and your body and your schedule and just your mission and your purpose with changing your environment, because we both know how much environment impacts the way that we live and the way that we think, and even just our unconscious beliefs and programming and environment we can be so sensitive to and so adaptive to. And yeah, I do remember, oh my gosh, when we first met in Natural Highs, which is a youth program for alternatives to substances and also brain chemistry, and learning about how herbs support our mental health, and learning how community builds us up and how we really shouldn't have to do it alone. And yeah, I feel like just meeting you has been so expansive into my own journey of giving myself that permission to explore and to but also retreat, but also put myself out there, and then also try new things. Like it can be so satisfying and so easy to the mind to just like think you have it figured out, but really it's like, wait a minute, what about the adventure? What about the excitement of change? And I feel like you really highlighted that for me of like, whoa, like change can be like so liberating. And it's been amazing to witness your journey.
Mm, that's so sweet. I really feel like change is quite hard for me. But as you were just talking, I was thinking of how we shared in like such an amazing just couple nights venturing up to the mountains and going to um, the hot springs in, I'm blanking on what the hot springs are called.
The strawberry steamboat
Oh
or
yeah,
steamboat in
I was
steam.
about to say rainbow hot springs. I was like, nope, it's some other sweet word. And like, I think we both just noticed in that really small trip how healthy of a shift leaving the place where you call home, um, just for a minute and coming back, how like that can really help you to gain perspective on whatever it is like that you're like obstacles that you're working through in that moment, because especially like we say the boulder bubble sometimes, right? Like we can get so stuck in driving the same roads, talking to the same people, even in such a like alternative and um, lively town, you can still feel quite um, yeah, stuck in certain paths, which then like correlate to our thoughts and our thoughts getting stuck on these certain neural paths. And just going to a new place together was so lovely. And I felt like there was also a lot of power in doing that as girlfriends. Two two girls hitting the road. We had like a pretty long drive, and yeah, that was so lovely.
Oh my gosh. And Meraki could join us too. It felt so special. Like
Mhm.
for that time, I think it was in May, and it was such a high transition time. Like you were getting ready to leave, and like big changes were coming up for me at work and life choices. And yeah, it's like this slowing down to speed up. It's like this slowing down to realign, like I remember in Steamboat there was that beautiful, they called it Core Trail, and it was just like,
Mhm.
I had never been to Steamboat before, but it felt like we were the only ones there. Like it was a very spiritual experience to have like, have our little trip planned and not to have a ton of things on the schedule, but just like a few things that would be really relaxing, but then to also like learn about the mystery within that of like, whoa, who knew what this would feel like or sense like?
I think it's so important when like being in nature to have some sort of structure for what you might do that day, but then have even more flexibility, to be open to what the direction that nature might want to pull you in. Like I've noticed this on these travels, as well as like my time at Sunflower and sea kayak guiding too. It's like if you create, the strict structure that only has a couple like 10-minute breaks in it for you to like wander around or whatever, oftentimes I'm like so caught up in meeting the next goal that I'm not actually present in that moment. And uh, when we can listen to like the little whispers that pull us, like, oh, why don't you take a left here, and then you end up down like this beautiful road with a river, or it's just been really fun going with the pace of nature on this trip, because I don't have a lot of things scheduled other than meeting up with a few friends. And I really loved how you said slowing down to speed up, because I feel that that's what, no matter if it's just a small walk that you can integrate throughout your day, or like maybe a road trip or some longer moments or times where you're out camping, it really like recharges and energizes us to then move back into a more fast-paced work setting, um, and reach those goals rather than getting burnt out over and over again and then not having some sort of recharge. Um,
I feel like time in nature is never wasted, or like time with our emotions is never wasted, or just time with
mhm,
ourselves is never wasted. Like I feel like there's so much emphasis on like fitting in or like doing externally or like being social even. It's like there's these pressures of like how to show up and when to show up and where to show up. But like if you're only tending to your needs of following your true north, like how you said, like listening and tuning in to actually, I'm going to go down this street I've never gone down before, which I did do today actually on my way to,
no way.
like, I was walking to Thrive and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take Grandview instead of University, like, not that it was that different, but I saw like angel numbers and then I saw a little bunny and I was like, see,
Mm,
like I can just create whatever. And like that is what nature teaches us. It's like nature is so abundant. Nature has everything it needs. It waits to receive, it's so structured and rooted and grounded, but also like patient and happening in cycles and surrendering to what is, like it just like the leaves are shedding right now and like the trees don't fight it. They just let it happen, you know?
mhm.
And it's their
Yeah,
process. It's
I
so
love the words like abundance and patience. Like those really stood out to me. And I had like this lesson come about the other day at some more hot springs actually. They're called Sloquet Hot Springs, and they're a few hours north of Vancouver. And it was this horrendous Forest Service road that took over 3 hours to get down. It was like it shouldn't have taken that long, but it's just such a rough road to get to these hot springs. And you're in the middle of nowhere, like you're in the middle of the beautiful rainforest out in BC, and then there's these really hot springs right on the edge of a river, so totally natural, but like humans built up. Anyway, so I was sitting there and I was just kind of amazed at like how in North America nature provides like runs these baths for us pretty much. Like, we're getting cold and it's starting to snow here and different things like that, and she runs these baths. But then as I was sitting there, I saw that someone had carved their initials into a rock. And I was thinking how many thousands of people have sat in these hot springs before, but did not carve their initials into the rock. And I was like, isn't that so interesting how some of us are propelled, moved to like ensure that we're remembered and that that moment is remembered because it's so meaningful and you feel like, you know, whatever that person was feeling, a deep connection with those pools and with maybe having some sort of spiritual connection or emotional sense of calm and well-being and whatever pushed them to write their initials there. I thought Mother Nature's love is abundant, and she holds every person in those pools with so much love and whatever medicine they're looking for day to day to day. And she's not thinking about the last people who came through. And just because someone was there and never wrote their initials didn't mean that they didn't receive the exact amount of support that they needed from that place. And it was just this really simple thought for me around learning from the abundance that nature is constantly offering. And it was really like a lesson in jealousy and like spending time with other people and other people spending time, with people who aren't me, and then me feeling jealous in whatever way that like I'm not receiving that person's time and love. But um yeah, that just like I have the capacity to hold that amount of love for every person, and just because other people are engaging in like these different relationships, it doesn't mean that our relationship isn't just as strong as well. And yeah, I just thought that was such a sweet lesson, and that they're constantly flowing those lessons out of the trees and the waters. And everything around us.
Yeah, it is fascinating how like we feel like um we want to either like leave our legacy or like leave our mark, like it's fascinating to me that's meaningful to us, because on one hand it's like you could see it and not really know who it is or what it means, but you could know that it does mean something to someone, and
Mm-hmm.
like yeah, even just like the action of carving, it's like it's it's more meaningful to us than it is to like nature, or just yeah, just to have it there. But yeah, I relate to like what you shared too about um like the capacity to give and also like receive. And I feel like I'm in like a season of my life where I'm inviting more receiving, like I'm inviting more of just allowing, and also like I don't know if it's going inward, but it's more so like being really strict about my own boundaries and just being able to like say when I want to share my energy with who, like being able to really say, hey, like this is a season in my life where I'm like, maybe I'm saying no to most things because I want that space to create, to dream, to meditate, to just simply have space. Because I feel like in my past, I've said yes to everything. And then I've kind of like lost myself along the way of like, wait a minute, I'm doing all these things that everybody else wants. And now, oh, kind of left myself behind. But okay, now I like know that I can ask for what I want. But then it's like another existential crisis. What do I want? If I've always been pleasing others and putting others before myself, like now I get to really tune into even like an inner child space of what do I want? Like, can I aimlessly walk around town? Can I go to the playground and just follow my inclination of like what I want to do and not have to have it all figured out? It's like it can be simple and it can still be like okay. Like I feel like that's another thing we don't really um like in terms of like just like how we're tending to our energy and how we're cultivating who we want to become. It's like even just the people that come in and out of our lives in different seasons. I feel like we're not really taught that that's okay for people to come and go and for it to flow, and even just yeah, relational wise, it's like, you have certain people that you touch in with often, and then there's people where it's less often. And then it's like some people fade away, but it's not a bad thing. It's like, well, how much space do we have now? How much space are we currently working with? And like, can it be okay that it flows and that it doesn't need to mean anything?
Totally. Like, do you think it's possible to elevate that cyclical way of being in relationship with ourselves and others, so that it's not, because I feel like now it's almost looked at like a failure, right? We're like living this very linear life as we pick up practices and different tools and different relationships and hobbies and all these different things. If we're not doing all of them all of the time, we're thinking of ourselves as a failure. If I'm not checking in with everyone that I'm wanting to not lose a relationship with, that's a failure. If I'm not doing all of these different practices, if I'm not, self work and doing my career goals and everything at once, there's something in the back of our mind saying that we're not enough and that we're a failure. But I do really hear what you're saying and believe that the way to be successful in all of the realms of our life is to allow ourselves to live in cycles
Mhm.
and to like have relationships with different people. And yeah, like not be offended when we don't reach out for a little while and then just pig off when life brings us back together, and um, to not be so hard on ourselves when we don't meet all of what we had planned for that day. And you know what I'm saying. But yeah, I'm curious if you think that we're moving in that direction of almost like liberating that way of being rather than looking at it with maybe labels around of failure or laziness or things like that.
Yeah, it's like I think what you're speaking to has a lot to do with like our connection to our even our bodies, even to ourselves.
Mm,
Like when we're tending to what our needs are and our deepest desires, like it may not align with the plan or what we think we wanted, you know? And like just giving ourselves that permission to change the pace or to like reschedule or to just not reschedule, you know? Like, oh, I thought that I wanted to do this thing and I actually don't want to do it and I actually don't want to reschedule it. Let's
hmm.
clear it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just give ourselves permission that you know what? Maybe we check in about this next month. Maybe we check in next year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, but there, it also feels like, I don't know if the word is taboo, but it just feels like, wait, how can you do that? You know, it almost feels like this violation of commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, you're not a bad person for evaluating your current state and like to challenge that piece of the self-worth or the am I enough, it's like, well, maybe this whole time we've been overdoing it. You know, maybe this whole
Mm-hmm.
time we've been overextending, overexerting, and then we run into these symptoms of being burnt out. And that's like kind of what catches our attention of being like, wait a second, like maybe this is not what I want, you know? And I think people forget like how much power they actually do have to create the life that they want because they're like fed these stories um, that say that you do have to achieve and that you do have to gain external approval and that you do have to find the answer outside of yourself and that you do have to pass the tests that are, you know, created by, you know, like other things, you know, versus like I mean, even in our school systems, we don't really teach that the answers are within. We don't really teach like that curiosity. We don't really teach that. I mean, some places do, but just in general, like the way that a test is set up is like you have to answer and your answer has to be right according to somebody else, whether that person wrote the book or is this like
Mm-hmm.
an anonymous authority, you know? Like even from a young age, our parents, and then our parents are our authority, and then our, you know, people around us are our authority. And sometimes we don't really have this official transition to have ourselves being our own authority. And so we're always
Yeah.
doubting ourselves because we've always looked to that like outer piece. So then it feels unnatural and almost wrong to be like, wait a second, I'm getting this intuitive hit of what is for me and what my passion is or my drive or whatever. But like maybe I should check with like all these people outside of myself to see if that's okay or if that's right or if that's, you know, it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's just going to give you even more questions, you know?
Mm-hmm. Of course, you're speaking to the question and the intention I was grappling with for this trip. You just hit it right on the head, Jen. And it was like me coming to this realization of um, my parents are still the people that I have holding authority um, over my life decisions. And um, that I'm constantly looking for permission from them. Um, And so this trip has been a test, really, in myself of me trying to catch when I am looking to give away my authority and looking for permission to do something that I already know is right for me. And I'm trying to give that back to myself, which is a really hard process. And it feels like it could have been such an easy lesson. Of course, I'm not a parent, so I don't know yet, but it feels like that could have been easily integrated into my childhood of, you know, asking certain questions and adults moving me towards finding the answers that are already within through curiosity and different things like that. And I'm just so grateful that I can go on this journey now, and try and reclaim or reassert my own intuition. But it's quite a roller coaster at the moment, to be honest. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you for such a vulnerable share. That's like so large, it's so big, and it feels like it's so worn, like the patterning is probably like just consistent and like in some sense like you did call that experience into your life for it to happen that way and for you to
Mm,
step to your power in that way. And it's usually when like our boundaries are crossed or where we feel angry or resentful of how something's going to then know, wait a second, this is where I draw the line and say, I'm trying it a different way. Or this is where I'm wondering if something else is going to feel more satisfying, or like, how will I know until I try? And I think that's one of the biggest things, whether you're a parent or a child, or yeah, like in that dynamic of forgiveness, like
mm,
just being able to forgive for yourself and to know that like your caregiver and parent was doing what they could, how they could, in the best way of their ability, of what they knew,
mm,
and also like getting to have the feelings around it, but also like I feel like what's advanced is like that forgiveness and that self accountability of like, okay, where do I go from here? And even if I agree or disagree with parts of it or all of it, or if it's complicated and messy, like how can I be accountable for like my role, which feels so hard because as a child you're vulnerable and you're, so open and empathetic and connected to source and to nature and to all these things. And it does become incongruent when like there's a force outside of yourself telling you if you were right or wrong, or if you need to listen to them or do something different. It's like that inner voice always knows deep down. And I think the letting go and the shedding can be the painful part, but also
mm.
have such a transformational like quality to it too. And it doesn't mean that like we're gonna just let go once. Like we might have to let go time and time and time again in different ways.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I think that that's at least where I usually get to when I'm walking down this path of self-awareness and greeting new lessons along the way. I can see, I can now see like where I've um what I would like to work on, and I would like to, be able to assert myself or validate certain aspects of my life. And you can kind of like see the pattern that built that created the circumstance that I'm in now. but it's really hard for me to let go of the what if, or the forgive, or to offer forgiveness to myself and others. And even though in my heart it's like what I want, there's this, um I'm not, it might just be the ego, having a loud grasp on whatever like pain I feel like could have been avoided if it had only been a different way. But I think that's definitely um like just so beautiful how you worded it, and like the forgiveness doesn't have to be for others, but just for ourselves to be able to move through and like um, see our parents as like these beautiful humans who did the absolute best they could with all of the tools that they truly had. Yeah, yeah,
Totally. Yeah. And it's like, it is coming from like an advanced perspective to be able to like intend that something different could happen, right? But also, like, it's not easy to say that, it happened for a reason, or that, like it's not easy to accept. I feel like that's advanced. And so, like, to have an intention of like wishing it was different, that feels really normal to me. And like accepting what is feels advanced because it's like you have to go through all of those feelings first to say, okay, this is where I'm at, and just like I always think about too when I do my own healing, it's like I'm making these intentions. I am doing this like for me and for my ancestors. I'm giving this pain back to whoever it belongs to, but it probably didn't even belong to my ancestors either. So it's like
right.
when I return it, I like wish for them to return it too. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's just like I want them to feel free too. And especially in those moments where I feel alone or I feel defeated, but I have evidence in my world that shows like success, or um, that like I'm progressing or advancing or growing, like even when I'm feeling the deepest sorrow or the lowest low, and even when I have all that evidence around me, it can still feel heavy. It can still feel like, wow, this is deep. Like this runs deep. And like, yeah, there it feels like there's so much trust with it too, of just being able to surrender to it, letting it go, but like not having to do it alone.
hmm Yeah, it's really, I think, I'm reading one of Ram Dass's books right now, and he talks about the heart mind, and like it's hitting me in this new way of like, okay, I think that healing for me as an individual, I think, you know, healing is just so different for everyone, but I think it really has to be coming from just from the vibration of love. And I really have to start to access that place in me that is able to trust, and see everyone else as these souls that have, um, all that are also walking on a path of love. And even if I don't see it in all of their actions, like just trusting that, it's possible, I think is the only way that I'm going to get to a place of being able to let go. Because there's like this constant, conversation going on between, I don't have a better word for the rational mind, and like like not, like saying that it happens for a reason, like then all of like this, like the languages or the words in my rational mind start to like, um want to remind me of the pain, or of the all of the things that could have been different. And even though all of those might be true, they're still keeping me from being able to access that freedom that I want for myself and for everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it's like seeing everybody is what the universe is made out of, like everybody is their own universe. And it's likely that everything else is just stories, you know?
Mhm.
And another word for stories would just be like perception,
Mm.
like just that reminder
Mhm.
of like the reason that my perception's different than everyone else's is because I'm different. I've had different experiences. And it's like the beauty in seeing someone else, if you can, in like a neutral way, is like you get to learn about their lens and their eyes and their walk of life, like
Totally.
I feel like there can be so many. Like I was at Piante last night with Chris and I said to him, I was like, look around. Like there's so many people here that like we will never embrace or um
Mm.
like connect deeply with, like if I went over to that table and said, oh my gosh, it's so great to see you. I can't believe you're here. I, it would devastate me if something happened to you, right? It's like people would think that you were nuts of like, wait,
Mhm.
you know this person? Like, why are they embracing you and caring for you? Like it's like
Mm.
we have these expectations of how we show up in the world. And it makes me think about like how often we really do that with the people that we are close with because we don't do it nearly enough. But then also like just that level of people we'll never do it with, it's like that level of vulnerability in connection, like if I were to walk up to that table and say all those things, they would be like, what? They wouldn't take it seriously, maybe, or maybe they would.
Mhm.
It is like that risk of the unknown. And something as simple as that, of us all just being in our own worlds.
Okay. For sure. Okay, that sounds great. Thanks.
And as we were saying that, Kara had someone come up to her.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like wondering if I'm talking too loud, but that's okay.
Well,
I
it's funny
think we're
because
okay.
like as I'm saying, like, yeah, we're never gonna talk to the people around us. But then like
Right.
it totally manifested.
Totally. Yeah.
But that's true. It's like it usually doesn't come to fruition until it is like a rule or a boundary, or it's like, oh, you wouldn't have come over to say hi, but you would come over to tell me what to do or what the expectation is.
Definitely.
If you're doing your job, you
Mhm.
such
Yeah. It
pressure
kind of comes back to the idea of like the right way of being,
of
like,
being, of
right,
doing.
that we're given a script that there's a right way to show up.
Yeah. Like in the
Mhm.
event that like life happens and that you're going to need to assess your next move, let me let you know what you'll need to do,
Mhm.
versus like
Definitely.
letting life happen. But then that also gets to be part of what life's happening is, in a weird way.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
gets to be part of life happening, but it is like in this cautious way.
Mhm.
Just so you
Totally.
know, just so you know, like, let me give you a warning.
Yeah. Yeah. All around us.
Oh my gosh. That's so what else has been like just your biggest treasure from being on the road? I love this for you.
Well, I've been doing a lot of rock climbing, and I'm hoping to combine rock climbing with the natural highs brain chemistry curriculum. And so it's almost been like a research study for this rock climbing for me at this moment in time. I'm like engaging in it in a different way, and trying to notice how I'm emotionally interacting with the sport. Um, and the different metaphors that can be found within the activity too. Trying to pick up on those things. And it's rock climbing for me has been a really rocky relationship. I have had, some really fun times where I felt empowered and strong, and have been able to climb things that would like really scare me to death now. And then I've had a time where I was just scared all the time whenever I would step off the ground. And now I'm kind of in this middle place, and I'm trying to come back into a healthier relationship with the sport. Um, and it's been quite beautiful. So like within rock climbing, there's different ways of going about it, but oftentimes people are trying to lead routes, which is when you're placing your protection as you move up the rock. Instead of the rope being above you, the rope is below you, connected to a last piece of protection. So if you were to fall, you'll still get caught and won't hit the ground, but you'll fall to or just below the last piece of protection that you placed in the rock, or that is permanently built into the rock. And falling is what is really scary for me, even though I know I'm safe. And so that's really been the theme that I've been working with is trust, and is taking risks that I'm comfortable with to build my confidence, and knowing when the climb is too scary, that it's actually going to do detriment to my mental health. So knowing like assessing risks essentially. And I think that this is like such an interesting like lesson that can be related to all aspects of our life, when we're just like taking risks, whether that's like going up to someone and saying hi, trying to make new relationships, whether it's like asking for funding for passion projects, or whatever it is you're doing. There's certain things where if you get shut down, you might just not try again. It might be too devastating and scary. And there's certain things where if you get shut down, you can take that as a stepping stone to know how to make your next move, and then there's also successes that just keep propelling you along the way. And I find that rock climbing is so interesting because there's a top point, right, where the view is the same, but the way you get there is so it's different for everyone, and it's based on your height, how long your arms are, how much you weigh, how flexible you are. It's based on your mental experiences with the sport in the past, or your capacity to work with fear and to trust others. And it it often shows up that there's this attitude of a right way of climbing a route.
Mm.
Oh, you missed that hold. Oh, you
Yeah.
should have put your foot there. Oh, you should have done this. Oh, too bad you fell, but nice you still made it up. There's a right way of doing the route. Like there's the top way of walking up to it, never have seen anyone climbed it before, climbing it, getting to the top without falling. That's the best way to do it. And I've been really wondering if there's a way to bring a more compassionate conversation into the sport of rock climbing. If like every way that someone climbed could be celebrated equally, and that we don't know, what's affecting that person that day, or like why they ended up making those certain choices. And I'm hoping, I'm trying to document these little thoughts, and I'm hoping to engage youth in these conversations, because I really think that um, that this sport could move towards a really like liberatory way of engaging with social justice issues as well. Like move individuals towards having like this like a base of engaging with diversity and and the differences we find in everyday life, um, with a lot of compassion and strength. And so yeah, that's what's been on my mind lately, and I'm I'm feeling really like grateful that I'm just able to take this time to really like think through the possibilities of bringing people who have never climbed into this world.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, it's almost like everybody's way is right for them, you know, like leaving that room for being led, you know,
Hmm.
that room for the internal voice to come online, like leaving room for the creativity. What if we find a new route? What if we find
Totally.
a new path that's never been discovered? What if that feels different? What if we can learn how to feel different? And like
Yeah.
even yeah, like this sounds so similar to like the running group that I'm starting when it
Mm.
comes to that piece of efficiency versus like I'm having people run for time versus the speed and the distance. The speed and the distance will come, but if we run for
Mm.
time and we say this is the time we're giving ourselves to do this run, then we give ourselves that unconscious permission to let it be what it is. It's almost like painting with your eyes closed, or it's almost like,
Mm.
like taking a risk, but having the safety of the container, but still like taking your risk. And it's reminding me of my recent motto where I say, don't say yes, assess. Because, like,
Mm.
when we say yes so easily and quickly and routinely, and like that habit forming, sure, yeah, okay. It's like it challenges us to be like, wait, I've said yes to this before, but maybe today I'm different. Maybe I'm showing up with more on my plate today, or, like maybe I've spent all day thinking about how this is going to go. And so I've never actually been in the moment all day today. Now that I'm actually arriving to the moment, now it feels different than like how I anticipated.
Totally. And this is just remind me back to like the the freedom that comes from, or the pleasure that comes from having some structure within our lives or boundaries, right? Like you can say yes, but there can be something after that yes too. Like oftentimes I'll agree to go climbing and then it'll take like 5 hours and then I'll be resentful that I didn't get to do what else I had planned for that day. But I just make the agreement by saying yes. And I could have said simply, like, yeah, I'll come and I'll do like 3 climbs with you. Or I have like 3 hours to climb today, or something like that. And it's just entering into these worlds together with totally different expectations and no communication. I'm just like seeing that is kind of the norm, at least in the relationships that I'm in right now. And I'm excited to try and hold my boundaries and like just have more open communication with other people. Um, it's hard though because it's such a two-way street, like what you were saying before, around being able to hold your boundaries and either like cancel plans or change plans and things like that. It's like at one point it's like getting to be okay with that for yourself, that like you allow yourself permission to be with where you are in that moment and to assess if that's the right choice for you. But then like sometimes there's like these unintended consequences on the relationship because that other person isn't ready to be in a place where other people have permission to assess what their capacity is. And like I guess that's just how it goes in some ways, that there might be like, you know a, like a tear in that relationship, but it would be so beautiful if like both sides could get to a point of like giving each other and ourselves permission to assess.
Yeah, like it reminds me, like what you're sharing, it reminds me of like having that power of choice, and like the other party having that realization of, oh yeah, I am in no control of like who I am in relationship with, like this element of codependency becomes shattered because both people are coexisting, but like also making the choices for themselves. And what else I'm hearing you speak to is like this tolerance of, am I willing to be in discomfort? Am I willing to feel uncomfortable, right? If that's what's required for a relationship. Like it may not go every way I want it to, and it's never going to go exactly as planned, like it's going to require us to have our feelings. And if we are led to disappointment or being upset, like we can trust that we can handle that. And if the person we're in relationship with, if they can't handle that, like we get to really see, well, why is that? Is that because um, they are codependent with us, or that they want to have more control, or that they are like uncomfortable with those changes, right? Like, are they uncomfortable with change at the last minute because that has to do with their own trauma history or their own, it will likely have more to do with them than it does with you, even though your choice elicits a response within them. It's like it gets to challenge the relationship on a deeper level. People get to lean in and say,
Mm.
hey, that's what this is bringing up for me. I realize it has nothing to do with you, but this is where I'm at. And yeah, that vulnerability of sharing, like, is Kara going to think I'm nuts for telling her like what I feel? Most of the time people hold in their feelings because they're worried about how that will be interpreted, or if they'll, be loved any less. And I think that's the edge we're pushing right now of, you know what, I'm willing to be vulnerable in a relationship because that's actually what gets me to the next level. That's like my ticket to deepening or being more authentic. And if that person's upset with me, maybe I'll be able to like handle it just like a little bit more today than I did yesterday, or, like that bravery for connecting to our own self in effort to expand when we connect with others is also something that I feel like hasn't really been taught, but that we're kind of moving toward. And that's what it's all about, is that growth edge and like that willingness to be true, because then that also gives others permission to do the same, even if they're upset, or even if they're allowed to have whatever feeling it is. And hopefully they can learn to channel that and process that in a healthy way, um, with their ownership, with their accountability, in kind of whatever place that they're in.
Totally. Have you found that there's like any specific vocabulary when voicing like those boundaries, or different things that's like most compassionate and like the other people are able to receive in a way without maybe, I mean, we can't control how they receive it, but like in a way that doesn't elicit like defensiveness? Or
Yeah.
is that missing the point?
Well, yeah, it's like on one hand, it could be, right? Like you could check with yourself and say, what part of me is trying to protect their feelings? What part of me perceives that they're fragile and can't handle this? Like, what part of me is scared to lose connection, or to, you know, be in that role of like not being liked, Because those are all real things that like I feel like come up for me every day, all the time. It's like, am I willing to be seen as the bad guy? Am I willing to be seen as, um, you know, like selfish or whatever? It's like, oh, I hate that. I want to be a people pleaser, but it's also my job to like let that pattern go. So it's like
Mm.
we can still be aware of it and also know where we're headed, but it can be risky, right? It can be such a risk to say what you need in relationship because it might come with the pushback of others. And if they're not um, responding in an evolved way, then it's like, okay, I know where they are, and
Mhm.
this is still painful, and it's also like you won't know till you try either. Like, I know when I think about my own family, it's like their emotional tolerance, right? It's like it's not always high. They're not always available to receive feedback.
Mhm.
And like, that's sad. It can be. And that doesn't mean that I have to like abandon myself by not sharing what I need or saying what's important to me or saying what my non negotiables are. Like, it's like, I will not take responsibility for something I didn't do, or I will not feel bad for saying what I needed,
Mm.
even if that goes against what you wanted for me, or, even if that requires you to have feelings about my response. It like, I feel like it being more true is always going to challenge that next level and expand to like that next level, vulnerability wise.
Yeah,
Sometimes not everybody is willing to be vulnerable in relationship, and that's where it can get tricky.
totally. Yeah, I notice like personally that the fear of rejection, has so much control over how I show up in relationships. Um, and I don't think I really realized it until lately of how much it also influences how I'm in relationship with myself. And because people pleasing in these actions, I'm usually rejecting my need or my boundary, just to show up in the way that I think that someone else wants me to, or in whatever way where I won't be rejected. Um, and it's so scary to even you know slightly push that edge. And when I have in the past, like I think I've had negative and positive experiences, and I think sometimes the negative experiences can have like a lingering effect on like how much I'm able to walk to that edge again. But when I have been met with like positive experiences of people just like totally seeing me in my need, and as an individual that's like that decision isn't really attached to their self-worth or who they are, and they're just able to celebrate like me setting a boundary or like meeting my need, it's been such an empowering and beautiful moment in my life. And it kind of is inspiring that maybe we could like live in a world where that's more the majority of how we meet each other's boundaries.
Yeah, it's so common to feel that fear. I'm in that boat with you too, of like just feeling terrified. And it's like, yeah, how you're saying of like, can I challenge myself to see if that's true? Like, is that fear true in this moment? Maybe it's been in the past, but is it true right now? Like, what is the risk? Okay. Am I going to die? Maybe. Okay. Let's try it.
Yeah,
It is standing up to the people that we love and care about, that we
yeah,
wouldn't want to lose, especially, that, especially with family too, it's so karmic, and like we just feel that natural pull and connection because they're part of who we are. We share their DNA, we share their generational patterns, not that we have to carry it all, but we share it. And yeah, it's like this loyalty in a sense. And how dare we do it different?
Mhm.
So even though that might be more aligned with who we really are, you know?
Yeah.
How dare we break
Yeah.
the mold, because how dare we remind everyone else of ways that they haven't, you know,
Yeah.
in ways that they haven't perhaps lived fully to their purpose or
Mhm.
model that. And if we don't have modeling of that, we get to look elsewhere, or we get to be that model, which requires so much courage and so much risk emotionally.
Yeah. It comes right back to the climbing, of just celebrating the different ways of climbing up our life, you know, climbing through these experiences from moment to moment up the little holds on the rock. It's like so funny to think that we're so attached to this right way of doing things when it's really all about the experience and like just thinking like through humanity and how like trying something different is what got us to this um, evolved state of being that we're in right now, and yet we're so scared of it at the same time.
Yeah, we're so interesting as humans. It's like we want to grow and evolve, but we're also comfortable with what we know.
Mhm.
So we almost need a little bit of hand holding, whether that's from ourselves or with each other. Like as you mentioned, the rocks, like, yeah, sometimes you do have to like go down to go back up. But what if like your goal that day is not to go up? What if you're just going like sideways and like, doing your own path? Like, yeah, it also reminds me of that saying that healing is not linear. Like that it
Mhm.
gets to, do its own like patterning and that I mean even the way that we track time, like I guess time would be the only thing that really is linear, or like the way that we age, like you can see that in a linear way.
Mhm.
But what if our structures didn't have to be linear within that, you know?
Definitely. Yeah.
It definitely challenges some paradigms for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're really living in a time where we're fighting to liberate the feminine, and like no matter your gender, everyone has some femininity within them, and it's often looked at as the inferior aspects of who we are, and it's often associated with cycles. And um, I think for a long time we've been fighting for that to be seen as its own wisdom, and maybe not maybe if we maybe like we're just gonna keep reckoning with these deep existential questions until the majority truly comes into this healthy relationship with the feminine, and the linear ways of moving through phases of our life or times are like can be so amazing, but that doesn't mean that other ways aren't amazing as well.
Yeah, I love this so much. It's like the possibility of different timelines or different realities. And yeah, like the masculine structures need to be in place, like need to be set and like be that grounding. And like that has to come into balance with the feminine. It can't be overpowering. Like once all the logistics and the structures are set and put in place, then that gives the feminine permission to receive, to flow, to be abundant in that wisdom, in that rich creativity. Like we literally call it the flow, whether that's
Mhm.
cycle or just like being able to be in the flow of like what we're moving next to, right? Of like, I'm flowing through my life, like the way that water flows. It's like if you think of a rock in the way, it will change the speed and like how the water flows, but it also needs to be there too, like
Mhm.
it still can like articulate or demonstrate where we're going, but like, yeah, just because we have such an overpowering, hyper masculine set of structure, it makes us question our flow. It makes us question if flowing is valid. When really it's like being overly structured and overly masculine is what's actually holding us back. It's not the flow that's holding us back, even though
Mhm.
we feel guilty or not enough when we're flowing, which is such a mind boggle. It's like, what? Like, how?
Mhm.
Like, think of just how exciting it is, even if you do come across boredom, or even if you do come across anxiety because, like, you're not on a plan or a schedule. It's like there's still kind of relief in that too, you know? There can be.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And I like the river analogy and thinking about like there's still banks directing that water, on where to go. And it enhances the ability for rivers to flow, right? And the different qualities that they possess, right? The speeds and the waves and the eddies and all these things. It's only possible because there's that structure that's holding the water. And so it's still like such a reciprocal relationship. Um, but if there was no water, we would lose. We wouldn't think of this little bank as beautiful. So they just need each other to work.
Yeah. Like this complementary energy
Mhm.
of structure and support and flow and the mystery of where we're headed.
Yeah,
Wow. This gives me
mystery it is.
so much food for thought. This gives me so much like so much magic to just simmer in.
Mhm. I always love hearing your thoughts, and I feel like we can enter into such a place of honestly having this like pretty strong heart connection of just like making it safe enough to go into the wonderings that we carry in everyday life that I just feel I only can really talk to a few people about without getting too self-conscious. So thank you for being that person in my life.
Of course, I'm so here for it. Like all of that. Like I would love to just keep expanding and holding more and just seeing what comes from it. Oh my gosh, Kara, thank you so much for coming today. Is there any last few things you would like to share or, just leave our listeners with?
Hmm. I think I'm good. I think I'm just happy. Feel like we touched on all the things that are important to me, nature, self healing, and awareness, and moving through these different realms of metaphors that we find in the different activities that we fill our days with. And yeah, yeah.
Ah, I love that we always get to come back to nature and just resource ourselves and give ourselves what we need. And even especially when we don't know what we need, like following our desires and following our worth and following um, our intuition and just having that deep gut like reassurance. Like I feel like in a world where there's so much that we don't know, it's like all we can do is what we know, that's like just
Mhm.
the thing. So yeah, that gets to just be what we rely on and what we do know. So thanks for being such a teacher for me too.
Thank you, Jen.
Thanks so
Love with you always. Thanks for this opportunity to talk.
Yes, of course.